Have you lost the connection with your higher self? Are you noticing the dis-ease of the outside world? It's time to reconnect with nature and each other and raise our consciousness, vibration, and frequency. Together we can create a world of peace and abundance. It's Spiritual Revolution Radio with your host, Dr. Will Miller.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spiritual Revolution Radio. I'm Dr. Will Miller with the Life by Design Healthy Living Institute, and today I have J.A. Plosker as my guest. Now, J.A. has been an attorney, a social worker, counselor, a college instructor, a multi-time award-winning author in the self-help and self-discovery industry. He now spends most of his time coaching, teaching, speaking, and creating content to empower others to live a more authentic and connected life. And J.A., welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the chance to be here.
I was going through your website today, and we have a lot in common in what we do. So I think we'll find plenty to talk about. So I really did want to just kind of go with the flow. But, yeah. I mean, you have been an attorney, you have been a social work counselor, you've been a college instructor. Kind of tell us how you got to where you're at today, your little journey, if you would.
Well, I always say to people, wow, you went to school for a long time. But for me, it was just an interest. Like, some people like quilting, some people like, I just happened to like going to school. And I never felt like I was done learning. And I just kept exploring paths. And so after my bachelor's degree in classics and comparative religion, I decided I wanted to keep going with that. So I went and got a master's in comparative religion and really enjoyed that and developed a subspecialty in the bioethics space. And so after that, it felt like a natural progression to go to law school, right? And to turn that interest in ethics into a legal career. And then I was asked to come back to the school where I was to teach ethics. And then I started teaching comparative religion. I started teaching philosophy. And after a while, I wanted to do something a little different. I always had an interest in counseling and coaching. So I decided to pursue an MSW degree. And I worked with people in mental health and addiction for a while before I went off and built a business in instructional design and writing trainings and also working on books and doing speaking on mindfulness and things like that. So I just love exploring. I love learning new things. And it just happened to coincide with degrees. So it kind of worked out.
So at what point did you just kind of say, I'm done with that part of my journey. I'm just going to coach and teach and speak and that?
Well, it happens over time, right? So you kind of develop an interest in an area, and then it just kind of takes up more and more space in your life. And that's not all I do. So like I said, one of my other businesses is I'm an instructional designer and a writer. So I write trainings, and I really, really enjoy that line of work. And then I also do this, and the time just felt right to get into coaching. I felt like I was in a place in my own personal journey where I could really help others. And it was just a natural transition. It just felt like the right time.
Well, and it sounds like that's what motivates you is not necessarily that you're not making a living somewhere else. You don't have to be a coach. You really are doing it just to help others. Yeah.
Well, that's it. And I do it because my passion, I just love talking to people about mindfulness, about personal growth. I applied for a TEDx talk because I just wanted so badly to get out certain messages. I started in indie press because I wanted so badly to put out books about personal growth and mindfulness and ancient wisdom. So, we get these intuitive hits that come up in us. And if we just pursue them slowly sometimes or peacefully sometimes, they begin to get louder and louder until we just can't ignore them anymore.
Right. You get a little anxious because it's pushing you and you're going, okay, I get it now.
Absolutely. That's exactly it.
I noticed on your website you say you've become comfortable with being an empath. Tell me about that. How do you be comfortable?
Yeah, well, that's comfortable with that identity in a lot of ways. Look, it's never easy. I always say to people when I'm, teaching or training, I don't really remember a time in my life when I wasn't anxious, when I didn't feel things very deeply, like when I didn't have a background anxiety. Mm-hmm. And I came to learn over years that a lot of the things that I was feeling, of course, weren't mine, right? And I couldn't just let it go. And I had so many people around me that could just let it go. And, I mean, I'm sure you know the buzzwords, you're being too sensitive, get over it. It's not that bad. And I would hear these things, but to me, it felt like the whole world was inside of me. And it took me so many years to come to a place where I could accept that this is just something I was going to feel, and I needed to learn to work with it. And it was okay that I needed quiet time. It was okay that I needed isolation sometimes. It was okay to be a little more introverted. And when I embraced that, that's really when things started to change. And I started to become more comfortable with that, because I knew not everything I was feeling demanded my attention. I knew not everything I was feeling belonged to me. And that freed me up in a lot of ways. And I've become a little more comfortable with the feeling.
Well, and I think, as we go through life as empaths, and you start to recognize that, it's really at that point that you kind of admit and recognize that that's not yours that you're feeling.
Right.
And then you
right.
you can put it maybe as objectify it, if you will, a little bit, and just say, okay, I'm going to tuck this over here, and I'm going to go deal with what I need to do for me. Right.
That's right. And you become, like, through mindfulness practice and those things, you become an observer of your life.
Right.
So it's not that you're not participating in it, right? It's that you realize at the end of the movie that the characters aren't going to follow you home. And that's sort of where you have to be as an empath, is you can participate in the moving of the world. You can participate in the living of life, but you don't have to carry it with you everywhere. And you can train yourself to do that, to leave things, to drop things.
Yeah. I always tell people, you don't need to slow down. You just need to calm down. Right?
I love that.
So keep moving, but we need to learn to calm ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
On searching on your website, and I close my eyes here for a minute. I need to picture your website. It's Nobody Life. Tell me about Nobody Life.
Nobody Life is really a passion project. It's not a central focus, but it is the central focus, right? It's kind of the engine underneath. Years ago, when I was an aspiring writer or whatever, I used to walk around in bookstores. I used to think to myself, I'm just a nobody. Who's going to want to read a book? Who's going to want to read anything I have to say? And over years and years, I started to hear the term nobody being used by spiritual teachers in my life, personal growth teachers in my life, in really powerful ways. Yeah. And I realized, and I didn't invent this, of course, this isn't new, this is thousands of years old, that being nobody is really, if you flip it, the most powerful thing in the world. And we have two sides, this is what my TEDx talk was about. We're all somebody, right? We appear, we have a name, maybe we have a job title, but we're also nobody. And so many times we get out of balance, like everything that comes along, our somebody side steps in to manage it, right? I'm going to call a lawyer, or I'm going to figure this out, or I'm going to make this happen, or I'm going to do this or that. But we also have this other side of us where we can be still, like you said, be calm, and let the world reveal itself to us a little bit. And I think Nobody Life is really about striking that balance between our somebody sides and our nobody sides, realizing we can be both, and harnessing the power of both, and training ourselves in things like meditation, mindfulness, letting things go. And then we walk around feeling much, much more balanced, because there's these two sides of us that step in when they're needed, instead of completely taking over. And it's an image that to me has really had a lot of meaning, and it's evolved over the years. And it's been a very special and life-changing concept for me, a way to think about life.
You talk about, meditation and mindfulness and these exercises, but tell us what you mean by mindfulness, because it's such a broad word that's used by so many people. If you wouldn't just narrow it down for us, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, whenever I talk about it, when I would talk about it with clients, or I would train on it, I would ask people in the audience a lot of times, what is mindfulness? And I would get a lot of different answers. And so for me, it can mean two things. In its first way, it can mean really paying attention to the moment on purpose, paying attention to my thoughts, feelings, and body sensations, accepting them without judgment. So it's this state of really radical here-ness, right? But then we can also talk about it just as a state of radical awareness in life. And that's a doorway in. If I had clients I was working with who were uncomfortable with the concept or thought that it wouldn't fit in with maybe a particular religious or spiritual value, we would talk about it just as a simple radical awareness of how you show up in life. So that's really the way it's a being here-ness without judgment, with a radical sense of acceptance. And again, that's another concept that took my life from a very difficult place and made it something more manageable and more manageable. It was a touchstone concept that I could go back to find a little calm and a little nowness as I was carried away on anxiety. It would bring me back.
And it's actually a smart practice because as anxiety or a past trauma it kind of hits you, and if you can use that as your trigger to stay calm, if you will, right? To combat that's a smart way to do it. And you're right. So many people talk about, especially in meditation, as soon as you can you reach that state that you're no one, you're nobody,
right?
You're no body, right?
Right.
Then things just that's when things open up in meditation, and that's when things open up in your life, and you start getting the information that you need and the help that you need and self-help that you need.
Right. And mindfulness is, I talk to people a lot of times about this. I'll say, you could think of it as having two pieces, right? So people say, well, you have to meditate. I'm like, well, not necessarily. What you can try to do is find a point of focus, right? Find a point of concentration. And when your mind strays from that point of concentration, like focusing on your breath, right? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, your mind is going to do what, right? It's going to start
focusing on everything else.
Off it goes. Yeah. So the mindful moment, I always say to people, the distraction is the practice, because I got a lot of resistance around this when I was working in addiction. I was working with mental health. Right. Well, I can't meditate because my mind gets too distracted. And you have to reset expectations around mindfulness, right? The distraction is the practice. So the focus on the breath is wonderful, but it's the awareness of the straying of your attention from that and bringing it back. That's the magic. That's the mindful moment. And that's why I say, don't worry with meditation.
Oh. And I do the same thing, just in a much different, I say it a little differently is all. I just say, all those things that are coming through your head, those are the things that are supposed to be there. And if they stop coming, you're dead. So yes, that's good.
Absolutely.
It's really good that's happening.
Absolutely. 100%. Don't beat yourself up for that. Remember, you're practicing non-judgment. Right. Accept it, name it, watch it, observe it. Yeah. Then you're really in the flow of it.
Yeah. And I love that, the way you talk about that. So tell me, I'm going to hit you with just the stuff that comes to my head. So here we go. Tell us one thing, the one thing you would tell people to do in their life right now, if they could do nothing else to kind of calm the soul, if you will, and calm everything that's going on around us.
Well, I think it goes back to what we were just talking about. Your life is the one thing you have, right? Like breath is the one thing you have at all times. I would ask people to pay attention to their life. Just start there. Even if you're not ready to sit in the half lotus and focus on your breath and do that, just pay attention to small things in your day. Give them your complete attention, right? Wash a dish with purpose. Fold laundry like it's your job. The life you have is your opportunity to stay calm. Practice, observe the life you have. That's a big piece of advice actually that I do give on a regular basis.
And I like that because and that's just a good place for everyone to start, right?
Right.
And we get so caught up in like our daily life and rushing from here to there, and this happened yesterday, and now I've got to take care of this, and we just forget to do that.
We forget that we're alive.
Yeah.
We're being, it's like a ring through our nose. And so we either have the future pulling us forward, right? And this is that old metaphor, or it's pulling us backwards. And we forget that we really do have here. We really do have now. In fact, that's all we have, but we forget that.
Yeah.
And it's so ironic.
Yeah. And we get caught up in the past or the future, as opposed to just the here and now.
That's right. Absolutely.
Only place we are.
That's right.
So tell us some of the other things that you do. I mean, I know you do a lot of personal growth, personal development, kind of spiritual growth too. I noticed on your website, which is right down my alley. So kind of tell us, obviously mindfulness, but kind of help people discover those things, kind of go through that process.
Well, I work with people in different areas. So I work with, seekers, sensitives, entrepreneurs, and authors. And so if people have asked me before on shows or whatnot, how do I describe myself? And I always say I'm a seeker and a student. I'm always those things. So one of my passions is helping people to talk through, work through, and maybe they've had an event. They had a journaling session that kind of took on a life of its own. They had a voice that they heard. They had an intuitive hit that came true, and they don't really know where that fits in their life. They've never really had anybody they felt like they could talk to about those things. They can talk to me about it because that's my passion, as I'm sure it is for you. And we can talk through how that fits into your belief systems. Where does that come from? Why is there resistance to that? So that's one area that I work with. With authors, I'll have people coming to me with a nebulous book idea. They don't really know what direction to go. So using these techniques, right? These techniques cross the borders. Using things like mindfulness techniques and meditation techniques, we work on clearing blocks in writing and opening up to that intuition and writing from that heart-centered space, right? When our heads are blocked. I can work with people who are looking to start a business and they're not sure, they don't like that cutthroat world of entrepreneurship. But we can talk about how to build businesses with meaning. So basically, it's these toolboxes that we have, these things that we can do, these intentional discussions that we can have to help unlock potential, to loosen up belief systems, loosen people up a little bit, so that they can access what's inside of them. It's very fulfilling.
Yeah, it is, and I do what I do to help people. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, and my businesses take care of me. So I do what I do to help people.
If we take care of them, they take care of us.
That's right. Kind of down that line, as you talk about those things, you're helping these authors and these folks, something that I've ran into a lot lately as I talk to other, on this show, and I have so many people contacting me to be on the show, and I talk to a lot of people, and they're a lot of these healers and energy folks just seem to be so lost right now. It's like some wave came over the top of them and they're trying to get their senses back or something, What can you do for those kind of people? What would you suggest for those folks?
For me, the thing I always went back to as I've gone through my life is always trying to find some kind of grounding or anchoring technique. That's what I always come back to. Whether it's pretending that there's magnets in your feet and there's magnets in the earth and that they're connected, just so that you understand you do exist. So I like to picture maybe vines growing out of me into the earth. These are metaphors we can use to ground us, because I agree with you. I haven't been sleeping well. I've been, sometimes my energy's been really scattered. I've been a little forgetful, which isn't like me. And it goes back to that idea, right? Sometimes this isn't you. Sometimes this is something that's passing through you or swirling around you. And I use grounding techniques all day to keep me focused. And that really, really, really has helped to deflect a lot of the difficulty that we've all been going through in this past year. It's been a very difficult time. And grounding has really helped keep me focused and anchored so that I can do the things I need to do, so that I can show up for life.
Right.
And that's very important, to make sure that we show up.
Right. Yeah. I think the statement where you were talking about, it has been a hard year for everybody. Everything that's gone on has created this huge social energy, right?
Right.
And we're all swimming in that energy.
That's right.
We don't have a choice. We wake up every day and we're swimming in that energy.
That's right.
And I think it has caused damage in helping or in people not being able to ground, not knowing what direction to go, not seeming. I run into people. I'm working with a gal now that just is like, I don't even care anymore.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get them to step into their own power. Really, I guess is for lack of a better way of saying it. And I think it has been a struggle right now as we do things. I kind of want to move on because I have a few more things, and we're down to about only 5 minutes left. Time goes by so quickly here.
It does.
So on your website, you also talked about creating confidence for entrepreneurs and a passion, enhancing their passion. And really, this kind of goes along for anybody, I think, and what we've been talking about. So I think it's a good segue into it. But just talk about how we locate those avenues for that confidence, to get that passion back, to move forward, to build our businesses, to whatever it is we are that is our passion or our worthy ideal, our purpose, whatever,
Well, I think some part of it comes out, you were saying something before that really struck me, is that people just feel like they kind of want to give up.
Yeah.
I think that's a common thing with entrepreneurs. My wife's an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur, and sometimes you're just like, is this really worth it? And I think sometimes we have to acknowledge that. It starts with acknowledging that. It goes back to mindfulness, right? So instead of beating ourselves up for what we perceive to be, maybe we perceive ourselves to be lazy, or I don't have the chops for entrepreneurship, I just can't do this. Sometimes we just need to be with that feeling. Sometimes we just need to be okay with that and sit with that for a while, because maybe the path we're going down isn't really a path that is what we really want to do. So, somebody wants to develop an app. This is an example out of my life. Somebody wants to develop an app and they think it's a really great idea, but they just can't quite get the fire going. And then through conversation, it comes out, well, there's a lot of apps out there already like this. I don't really know if this is what I want to do. So I think sometimes giving people a permission, being a sounding board or a space where people feel safe admitting that the direction they're going isn't the right direction, or maybe they need to make a few adjustments, that can change lives. It can do that for authors too. Right. People dive into it. Authors are entrepreneurs in the indie space. We dive into an idea, we get 50 pages in and realize it's not going anywhere. Well, it's the same thing. Maybe we need to just sit with that for a while instead of forcing it, and give ourselves a safe space to question, to doubt, and to choose a new path. So I think part of finding our passion is giving ourselves space to have a change of heart, have a change of mind, have a change of direction, because then we don't feel like we're forcing it, and it gets our ego out of the way, right? Because then we don't get, well, I'm going to do this to prove to everyone I can do it. No, maybe we drop it and try something else. So these are all ways to help people bring out passion. Sometimes it's by acknowledging that they're not really passionate about the thing they think they are. And I found that to be a very interesting space to sit in with people.
Well, and I think you're right. I think a lot of people go down a path because they think that's what they're passionate about, or they're being kind of pulled that way or pushed that way by the people around them in their lives. And, I've found in the past, I've got to finish this program. I've got to have it done by next week. That was my goal, and I'm pushing and pushing. And all that does is, I always tell people, the harder you push, the more the universe will push back. It's an equal reaction, right? That's physics.
How it was with my books. I put out 2 books. It took me years to get those books out because they needed work, and I had to give myself space to acknowledge that. And then they turned out better than I ever thought that they would. And it was important to give that space. That was the key, was to let go a little bit.
Yeah, and I think people get so caught up in accomplishing things and getting done what their coach tells them to do, for instance, that they forget, no, don't worry about that. Let's just take some time and back up here for a minute. We're kind of running low on time here, but tell us how people can find you.
If you go to japlosker.com/links, you can find my books. I have An Audible Silence, The Nobody Bible. They're both there. You can schedule a free 15-minute consultation with me to see if we'd be a good fit as coach and client. You can follow me on Instagram at JAPlosker. And I just started a new project with my wife, Moving Toward Mindful. So we are on Instagram at Moving Toward Mindful. And you can also get my free mindfulness quick start guide at japlosker.com. It's just 2 pages to kind of help you kickstart your mindfulness practice. So japlosker.com/links, it's all there.
And I did see that they could just put in their email and get that free report from you. So
that's right. It's right there.
Everyone go to JA Plosker and do that. Thanks for being on the show today. And it's been fun.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I really do. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Awesome. Hey, everyone, it's time for a new spiritual revolution. We here at Spiritual Revolution Radio are committed to bringing you the knowledge to raise your frequency, reset your life code, and live a happier, healthier life. I'm Dr. Will Miller. Please check me out on my website, lifebydesign.institute, or contact me at Spiritual Revolution Radio to be on the show. And anything else, I want to ask one quick question. We got about 5 seconds. What's the one thing that changed your life?
Stopping and taking a breath. That has really practicing the pause changed my life.
Awesome. Love and peace, everyone. Thank you so much, Jay.
Thank you.
This has been Spiritual Revolution Radio with Dr. Will Miller. For more information or to be a guest, please visit lifebydesign.institute. Join us next week for another edition of Spiritual Revolution Radio with your host, Dr. Will Miller. This has been a production from a podcast studio.